But you know what? Let's just get started. So, welcome. Thank you for joining us for this panel, Setting Up a Private Lesson Business Sustainably, sponsored by Janet's Planet. My name's Fawn. My pronouns are they, them. And by way of visual description, I am a brown-skinned person with crazy, curly, dark brown hair. I'm standing, or I'm sitting in front of a yellow wall with some instruments hanging up. My guitar is down right now. I should probably fix that at some point. Um, and we're really happy to have you here today. Before we begin, I want to take a moment that we're joined by folks from around the globe and to collectively recognize the importance, complexity, and difficulty of offering land acknowledgements. Folk Alliance International and all of our North American region organizations, our activities take place on the ancestral indigenous land of the Osage, Kansa, Kaw, Kickapoo, and Oceti-Sakowin nations, also known as Kansas City. We invite you to not only join in acknowledging our shared responsibility to work towards reconciliation, but to taking personal, meaningful, and measurable action towards healing the legacies of colonialization, forced migration, and cultural erasure. So if you want to learn more about the indigenous land that you currently reside on, I'm dropping a link in the chat now. Really cool website where you can check out a map. So feel free to share with us, your own land acknowledgement as we're getting started this morning. But without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce all of you to our lovely speaker today, Janet Feld. Janet is an award-winning performing songwriter, and she's appeared at folk festivals, coffee houses. She's been teaching music since the 80s, and has been writing music. She has a band. She teaches guitar and songwriting classes at the Basim School of Music, and is the founder and chief music officer at Janet's Planet, Music Lessons for Humanoids. I've had quite a few conversations with Janet leading up to this webinar, and I've got to say, Janet really knows her stuff. I do marketing here at Folk Alliance, and I also do some freelance work. And just Janet, talking to you about this from like a music perspective, because I do so much creative work, has been really eye-opening to me, just how much overlap there is between like all of our different creative lives and just, trying to make money as a creative.
Yeah.
And I think that this conversation is going to be really helpful for those folks who really love what they're doing, but are just feeling drained and don't feel like they're getting as much out of their business as they possibly could. So I'm just going to pass this over to Janet, who's going to say a bit about herself and get us started with today's webinar.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fawn. My name is Janet Feld, and my pronouns are she and her. And by way of a visual description, I am, as of yesterday, 63 years old. Woohoo! And I'm tall. I have blonde hair and green eyes. And my background is I'm sitting here in my office and studio, and there's a piano and some guitars behind me, as well as some of my CD collection. And I am the adult child of, I sent you to college and you want to be a folk singer for a living. Maybe some of you can relate to that. So today I'm really excited about teaching this workshop. I'm going to teach you how to create your own private lesson semester package. And the idea is that it's going to make it possible for you to take really great care of your students while generating good, consistent income for you. So let's move on, and I'll tell you a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing today. Because in the same way that I teach music theory, I like to start with, why should you care? All right, so I'm just going to talk about some of the issues that come up that packages take care of. One of them is cancellations. Before I was offering packages, people would cancel. I had a 24-hour cancellation policy, and people would cancel within the 24-hour window, so they didn't have to pay for their lesson. And I was losing between $1,000 and $2,000 a year in income because of that. And then also sometimes people just didn't show up, or I would drive to their house and they weren't there because they forgot. Also, I was severely undercharging. And so in order to make just to earn a living wage. I was teaching 6 days a week. 3 or 4 of those days were 12-hour days. I was driving 2 students, and at one point I hadn't written a song in 2 years, and I've been writing songs since the 70s, and it was really, really upsetting for me. I thought, like, maybe I'm never going to be able to do this again. And the thing is, and I was making jokes about it, about, I'm earning tens of dozens of dollars a year as a folk singer, but really I was just exhausted, and I knew that what I was doing was just not sustainable. So actually, can anybody, oh, thank you for the birthday wishes. That's very nice. And so those issues that I'm talking about, cancellations, no shows, exhaustions, which one, I'm curious to know, like, put it in the chat. Is there any one of those that you relate to the most? Yeah, cancellations. They stink, right? And they really, they're frustrating. And so I'm going to teach you how to take care of that and, like, really reduce the number of cancellations. Anybody ever, like, deal with no shows? Like, you drive to someone's house, or you're sitting there in your studio, you're waiting for someone to show up and they don't show up. Yeah, frustration for planning. Oh yeah, definitely. Students not practicing. Oh boy, I like to talk about that too, because that's totally an issue. All right, so now here's how packages. Oh, thanks for putting that up for me, Fawn. So I love this meme here because there was a time in my life that I totally related to that. And I want to tell you now that I don't relate to that at all, which is a really, really happy thing. Or sometimes I like to say, I used to be the worst boss I ever had, and now I'm the best one. All right. So here's the thing. When you create a package, the thing is it's a way to create a system that really teaches your students how to treat you. And the turning point for me is I was working with a mentor at the time who said to me, Janet, you're not serving the people you serve if you're exhausted all the time. And that really hit me between the eyes, because my primary thing about being a teacher is I want to rock their world. I want to help them make their music playing dreams come true. So if I'm exhausted, it makes it harder for me to do that. And one of the things that happened when I created my first package, and there's one of the people that I'm mentoring right now, her name's Gretchen. One of the things that we're going to do today, because this is going to be a hands-on thing, is that once she listed out everything that she actually offers to her students, she was really surprised at how much she actually does. And that was it's a good surprise, because it's like, wow, I really offer my students something of real value, and many things of real value. And it's very easy to feel like, oh, I don't give them enough, but that's usually not true. It's just a perception that we have. The other thing is, if people have canceled, then if they pay in advance, you're already paid. Also, once I started having people pay in advance, the no-shows just disappeared, which is great. And it's, it pretty much never happens. So, and I do offer cancellations, but they're limited to a certain number of cancellations per semester. And so that actually cuts down on a lot of the cancellations as well, because they only get one or two. Now, one of the most important things is, the best part about creating packages is that it gave me, suddenly I had more bandwidth. It gave me, and then after I hadn't written a song in 2 years, when I started changing the way I offered lessons, suddenly I was feeling like, wow, what is this interesting sensation of feeling rested? And took the first vacation I had taken in a few years, and afterwards wrote the first song I had written in 2 years, and did some ugly crying because I was so relieved that I could still do it, because it had been 2 years. So the other thing is, in creating, it created space. So, you know, one of the things we're always balancing as creative people is, there's the energy we put into our students, and it's easy to just put all our energy into them and not leave creative energy for ourselves. So this is a way to really manage that as well. So we're just creating space for that. So with that, let's dive in. Now, Fawn's going to put a link in the chat for you to download. And what it is it's a worksheet for you to create your own package. So there it is. Everybody see it in the chat. Okay, now everybody download it. And in just a moment, Fawn's going to display it on the screen so you can see it up there. This is a downloadable PDF. And it's meant, so it's meant to be filled in. So I'm going to talk you through the whole thing. All right. Now, in terms of like, if you're going to call your package something, don't worry about that yet. Let's talk about the nuts and bolts first. Now, what I recommend, let's start actually with what you're going to include, right? What I want you to think about now is that I'm going to set my timer for 3 minutes, and I want you to make a list of all the things that that you would, when you teach your students, when people sign up to study with you, what is it that you offer them? Okay. And I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes. All right. And you can use the PDF to fill it out. You can use pen and paper, whatever you like, but just, do you offer, when they sign up for lessons, do you include the sheet music? How long is your lesson? How often do you see them? Do you see them every week or every 2 weeks or whatever? It's like, just make a list. And 3 minutes. And actually, I am going to use the timer on the screen so you'll be able to see it. All right, and go. And don't overthink this. Just, you can always edit later. Okay. So put something in put a little note in the chat. Anybody surprised and in a good way about how much they actually offer their students? Or not? So sometimes it can feel, I like seeing it written out. Yeah, totally, Jean. Yeah, it's a real affirmation, isn't it? So, um, totally. All right. So, oh, I love that. Flora says, I'd want to learn that. Totally. I mean, I think that's something that really informs how I teach as a teacher is like, how is it that I would have wanted to learn when I was a beginner? You know, that totally. Um, yeah, that's great. Great stuff. And always a really, really good sign. All right. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to look at, one of the right before that, in terms of the materials, it says number of lessons and the duration of the lessons. Now, what I want you to think about, and I'm just going to set it in a moment. I'm going to set the timer for just a minute for you to think about it and write this down. So don't overthink this. Again, you can always edit it later. Is think about how long, what's the shortest amount of time, the shortest number of weeks that a person can work with you and still get good results. For me, my shortest lesson semester package is 3 months and 10 lessons. And that seems like that seems to be a real sweet spot for someone to get some real momentum going. And that's what works for me. So think about that. Like what's the shortest amount of time that someone would need to work with you? How often do you want to meet? Like how many lessons do you want to include in that period of time? And the duration of the lesson. And I offer the lesson these days. I offer 45-minute lessons because I only teach adults. And when I taught kids, I did 30 minutes just to accommodate their normal attention span. But the packages cost the same regardless of the length of the lesson, which was a huge change for me. But it was really like the length of the lesson. It's going from a dollars for hours mode to you're paying for an entire package. Like you pay one price, you go to the buffet, and even if you don't eat everything at the buffet, because you usually don't, you still pay the same price. So that's what you're creating as a buffet. And that's what you just made your list for. So think about that. I'm going to set the timer for 1 minute and just write that down. How many lessons, how long the lesson is, and how long the semester will last. And let me just get my timer back up. And 1 minute and go. Okay, then time's up. And so yeah, I'd love to know. Put it in the chat. What did you do? How many lessons did you decide on? 5, 10, 30? And how long do you like your lessons to be? Let's see. I have students who've gotten a lot out of 1 to 3 lessons and then stop because they feel like they have enough tools to move on their own. I think that means I'm a good teacher, but I'm not sustaining students because of it. Oh, that's really, I'm so glad you said that, Ashley. Up 3 months, 15 lessons, 45 minutes. Love it. Love it. Yeah. Well, one of the things you can do, Ashley, is that, when you're during those 1 to 3 lessons, is that you can talk to them about things that, talk about goals with them. Like one of the things I like to do with my students is I'll have them tell me, like, what are your favorite songs? If you could put together a set list of like 6 songs that eventually you can just pick up, I teach primarily guitar, that you can just pick up guitar and just play it and sing it, at a moment's notice, what would those 6 songs be? And then we can work on like, oh, this is something that we're working on a long-term basis. So if you talk to your students about like what are their goals, then this fabulous experience they're having with you, you can really guide them on a very specific path that's going to help them reach their goals in a way that keeps you part of the equation. I don't know if that's helpful. Let me know if that was helpful or not. But that's often a really good thing, because one of the things, sometimes students will bring lessons to me, songs to me that are harder, they're much more difficult than what they're able to do in the present. But I'll say like, look, I'm glad you showed that to me, because now I know which skills to teach you so that eventually you can play that song. So cool. Roadmap, 3 months, 10 lessons, 40 to 45 minutes. Yeah. 3 months, 10 lessons, it's 45 minutes, and it's a really solid package. Now let's move on. And just this is a chance to really appreciate what makes, what are your superpowers? Like for me, I'm really good at teaching people scary things. For example, I'm really good at teaching people music theory, because as you guys know, very often, even when you utter the phrase music theory, people are like, so I have very, specific ways. Actually, the way I start a lesson on music theory is I'll say, like, why should you even care about this? And I start with like, why is this helpful to you, and why should you bother learning it? And then very often it feels like I'm about to teach you calculus, but I'm about to teach you 1+1=2 in terms of the theory that I teach. So that's one of my superpowers. So what are I'm going to set my alarm for another 3 minutes, and just make a list, anything you can think of, like what is it that students, and pay attention to like, what do students say to you? Like, I love it when you, or that was so helpful to me. And and sometimes it's things like I just had last weekend, I had a retreat, a weekend retreat for my private students. And at the end of it, I was asking them, what was your favorite part? And one of my students said, well, you really you made me feel really safe here. I felt emotionally very safe here. And I was a little nervous about coming. And so that was wonderful feedback for me, because that's certainly my intention when I host a retreat like that. So, all right, let me get my timer. I'm going to set it for 3 minutes and go. Okay. Times. Oh, not quite. Um, why don't you put in the chat, like, what are some of your superpowers? I'd love to find out. Um, teaching from a trauma-informed background, voice lessons. Wow. Great. Oh my goodness. Positivity and fun in teaching. Oh, this is great stuff. See, like, talk about, it's great to pay attention to this stuff because, um, these are the kinds of things that when you're reaching out to people to uh, let them know that you're offering lessons and you're communicating with people about what it is you do, these are the kinds of things that you can talk about, which helps them find out like where are your specialties. And then when they decide to sign up with you, it's because you're offering something that's really going to fit their needs. And then, paying you for lessons becomes a no-brainer because you've communicated like, oh yeah, I really need that, versus, you feeling like you have to be pushy or weird, which of course none of us like to do. And I think it's, you know, I'm never going to do that anyway. Um, so, Ashley, you were asking in the Q&A, about convincing people that virtual lessons are good and worth it. And that has to do with how you communicate with them. So, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a bit, but, when you're communicating with people and talking with them about what you offer, when people approach you for lessons and you're talking to them about it, or you're sending out emails, what you want to talk about is these are the results that my students get. Tell stories about your current students. I have all sorts of students. One of my students, she came to me because she wanted to be able to play piano. She's been a singer for decades and wants to be able to play an instrument to accompany herself and not be dependent on someone else. And she wanted to be able to start writing her own songs instead of singing covers. And she's been studying with me for 2 years, and now she's playing the piano beautifully, and she's just written her first 3 songs. And so those are the kinds of results she was looking for, and that's what people pay for. People pay for results. I work with at-risk youth and inmates. Group workshops help create empathy within the group. Oh, that's wonderful. Wow. Talk about music changing the world. Multi-genre teaching, music theory, songwriting, and ear tuning. Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. This is great stuff. Okay, so now let's move on, and I want to talk about just let's take another like 2 minutes to look at like any special events that you want to offer your students, things like recitals that help create community. I did recitals for years because, I don't know about you guys, but I teach all the cool people. And I love it when all the cool people can, meet each other and they get to see what each other is doing. And also when I say you're doing a great job, they're always thinking like, oh, she's just being nice. And I am really nice, but of course I would never be dishonest about stuff like that. And it's nice when they get to meet each other, which is why I started offering these weekend retreats. So what are some things? So I'm just going to set my alarm for 1 minute, and why don't you just take a moment and make a list of things that you would like to offer your students that really promote community. Here's some other things. I like to take them on field trips to open mics. All right, go. Okay. Um, all right. And let's put the chat back up. There we go. All right. Anything that I didn't mention? Like, I mean, do you guys like doing recitals or any, I don't know, house concerts or anything? What do you guys like to do with your students, to create community? Jam sessions? Definitely put it in the chat. Open mic field trips for sure. I don't call them recitals, and more regular basis Zoom and now in person student only open mics. Oh, what a great idea. Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, I have plenty of students that would rather eat dirt than get up on a stage and perform, but I always have students that really want to really want to do it. And it's so intimidating to go to an open mic by yourself and when you don't know anybody. So I go with them. And one of my students, when she gets up on stage, she says, especially the first couple times, she was like, if I make any mistakes, I'm one of Janet's students and it's all her fault. And that really helped her just not be so nervous. But it's a really, really nice way to support your students. And of course, when I would go to the open mic, I would play. And so it's a really nice, it's a nice way to support an open mic night as well. The hosts love it when I bring my students. It brings fresh energy to the open mic night, and it's just all around a really wonderful community event. Okay, so let's talk about the turn terms and conditions. Okay, this is the fine print. Okay, and I want to just say in advance, this is the kind of thing you want to make it really, really clear. And not that I learned this the hard way, except that I did. When my terms and conditions were not clear, it caused some communication problems and stress for me and for students in the past. And so as one of my mentors says, where there's a stress, there's a need for a system. And terms and conditions is really important. So I'm going to set my alarm for another minute, and just think about, like, let's say you have a 3-month semester. How many makeups do you want to offer? The way I do it is, with at least 24-hour cancellation, students within a 3-month period can schedule up to, well, initially when I did the 3-month package, it was up to 2 makeups per semester. These days I do 1 makeup per semester. Sometimes on a case-by-case basis, I will be flexible with it, but as sort of out of the gate, it's a really good thing, and it does eliminate a lot of cancellations. So just take a moment and think about what you want that to be. And then also, and I'm very clear about, there's no refunds. I offer tryout lessons that people pay for. So before they commit to a larger amount of time, they get to they pay to sample the merchandise. And so they know that my style is the best for them before they commit to a longer period of time. So there's no refunds. I offer makeups, I offer videos and things like that help, but no refunds. And that is a really, really helpful thing for not losing money. All right, let me set my timer for 1 more minute and go. All right. So, I just want to highlight before I move on, who is it? Who offer the offer of a week-long, oh, Heidi. Oh, hi, Heidi. She has a week-long dulcimer camp. What a great idea. Yeah, that's awesome. And, one of the things I've loved to do as a teacher over the decades is, watch what other people are doing. And when you see them doing something cool, steal from their toolbox. It's good. So people have some great ideas here. And let's share these ideas, because it just means that that's more happy musical students, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. All right. So, um, let's see. Let's talk about the money. Dum bum bum. Actually, let me play. I have sound effects that I downloaded when I taught children general music at schools and camps for 32 years, and so I downloaded these sound effects. But I use them with the adults now because, like, why should the kids have all the fun? All right, so we're going to talk about. Wait a minute, I have to turn on my volume. Here we go. Money. Woo! All right. So people were asking, like, how much do you charge for a package like this? Now, this is the thing. I want you to think about, like, one of something that somebody suggested to me a long time ago when I was first looking at, like, I knew that I needed to raise my prices, and I was always raising my prices like a $5 here, $10 there. And for my 3-month package, I was charging $500. And that was, for lessons where I was driving to people's houses in Boston area traffic. And this is a really frightening thing to do. Like, put something in the chat, like, and let me know if you feel this way too. Like, I was feeling like, oh my God, I live in the Boston area where, music teachers are a dime a dozen. Why would anybody, people can just go on YouTube or whatever. Like, why would anybody pay me for lessons and pay me a lot of money for it? That's how I felt. And, when I learned how to communicate the value of what I offer, I was able to, raise my prices. Actually, the first time I did it, I actually doubled my prices, which scared the bejesus out of me. And but let me tell you one of the benefits of that. At that point, I was teaching 6 days a week. I was teaching during school vacations at a vacation camp. I was doing Sunday school. I was doing summer camp. I was teaching evening classes for adults, general music during the day at a pre-K through 8th grade schools, and after school lessons. Okay, with several 12-hour days, and I had 11 private students. And when I doubled my prices, I lost 5 of those 11 students. But then the following fall, because at that time I was still teaching kids, I was earning the same amount of money for half the hours. Okay. Doesn't that sound nice? Let me just say that again because it was so awesome. Same amount of money, half the hours. All right. I went from 11 students to 6. All right. But it was fine, So, and yes, and I don't travel to people's homes anymore either, because I'm glad I did it that way for a while, but glad I don't anymore. And I taught children for 32 years, and then I was ready to not do that anymore. So I only teach adults now. What I recommend for a price point, and somebody said to me, and this was good advice, was like, how much, you want to stretch and not splatter, how much, can you, what number can you say without spitting up? I'm being a bit fresh about it, but I think, maybe a good number to start if you're charging less than this is, what if, for a 3-month package, you're charging $750? All right, so let's do the math. I'm going to pull up my calculator here, and let's say you're charging, $750 for 3 months, and you have 5 students. That means that each quarter you're earning $3,750, and I'm going to multiply that by 4 because that's 4 quarters for the year. And that would add $15,000 a year to your income. I mean, how cool would that be to add $15,000 a year to your income? You know, especially, you know, if you're, you know, in these days, because of Zoom, you know, if you're a touring musician and you go on the road, all you need is a laptop. I mean, you could teach your lessons on a smartphone these days. And so that technology gives us so much flexibility. I do like to travel with a laptop because I do like to have screens to be able to see the electronic sheet music and my students at the same time. So I think that that's a suggestion to start with, especially if you're charging less than that. And somebody's asking me, Rick, what is your website host tools and how is it made? Oh, the host is, I use a system for my mailing list and everything in my shopping cart. It's called Kartra. I'll put it in the chat. It's one of a number of tools that are really good. There's a bunch of them, and the price point is actually very reasonable. So that's what I use. So what I want you to do is I'm going to set the alarm for like 2 more minutes, and I want you to write down a price, okay? And again, you can edit this, you can change this. Like, what does it mean for you to stretch and not splatter? Splatter is like, okay, I'm going to charge $1 million trillion, right? So what does it look like for you to stretch and not splatter? All right, I'm going to set the alarm for like, I'm going to do it for 1 minute. All right, so don't overthink this. All right, here we go. All right. Yeah, so Flora says if you teach 45 minutes, 10 lessons over 3 months, each lesson is 75. Yeah, well, technically, yes, but when people pay for a package, you're offering, like, for example, in my packages, when they pay their tuition, it includes sheet music, it includes video lessons, it includes, I have special concerts for my students, it includes retreats. Like, there's things that, you know, there's things, so they're paying for, like I said before, it's like when you go to a breakfast buffet, right? You're not going to eat everything on the buffet. You pick and choose what you want. So there's like a buffet of things that are offered as part of the semester package, and people use the things that they are that work best for them. Yeah, going from 1 hour to 45 minutes, but charging same price, making it easier to stack schedule. Absolutely, because then you can build in 15 minutes of a break, so you can like go get a snack, pee, you know, between lessons. It's a great idea, Brennan. All right. Yeah, so, you know, it also gets you away from, you know, like, okay, this is a 30-minute person, this is a 45-minute person. It's like, no, this is one price. It just keeps it simple for everybody. Okay, so, oh, Heidi's asking, do you offer video lessons to in-person people, i.e. record the lesson somehow or do videos afterward? That's a great question. I do both, actually, Heidi. If people are taking Zoom lessons, I always record the lesson, and not only do I send them the link so they have it, but also in my the system I use in Kartra, I have a like an online lesson vault, so that my private students can log in, and then there's all of their private lesson videos are all organized right in the vault, so they don't have to keep track of where they are. They're all in this one place. And so yeah, so how did that feel? Did that scare anybody? And what kind of prices did you come up with? I'd love to see what you did. And I want to just, Linda, you said 3 months, 10 to 45 minutes lessons, $1,000. That's what, when I doubled my prices, that's what I went to. And it really, it sure feels good when that money goes into your business banking account. And it's just, really made a huge difference for me. Oh, that's great, Jean. I'm glad that's helpful. Okay, so now let me just talk about a little bit about now that we've sort of gone through how you can create your package. Oh yeah, thank you, Alex. Yeah, Alex says, that they're not just paying for a lesson, they're getting a personal library to refer to. That's absolutely right. And my students love it. They really love it, because then you're not looking through, where did I put the video? They know where it is. See, and that's the thing. It's like people were asking, like, how do I communicate the value of what I offer to people? And this is where, telling stories about the results your students get is always worth its weight in gold. And being able to offer, because I offer, there's a robust price for what I offer. I charge a premium price for my packages. What it means is that I can do things like include a weekend retreat as part of their tuition. And one of my students, her name's Lee, she had signed up for one of my 1-year packages, and she wasn't sure if she was going to sign up again, or maybe she would just sign up for a shorter amount of time. And then she came to the retreat and she had such a great experience, she signed up for another year. Right. And it's because, so she had the experience, and she was asking me, I don't know if it's worth it to me to pay, because you're expensive, and I don't know if it's worth it to me. But she experienced the fact that it's worth it to her because it includes things like this retreat. The other thing is that once I wasn't exhausted all the time, it just gave me more creative energy to be able to really address my students' needs. I've always been a good teacher, and it's not just my job, it's my job in life. And suddenly I had more creative energy to come up with better solutions and pathways for my students. And the other thing, one of the things that can come up when you're offering, especially when you raise your prices, one of the things that I've done in the past is with current students, I'll raise their tuition a little bit less than for new students and say, I'm giving you a loyalty rate. That's a nice thing to do. But sometimes when people take a look at my lessons and I offer them a tryout lesson and stuff, they look at it and they say, I'm sorry, it's just not in my budget. I can't afford it. And now what that brings up for me is I want to grab onto their ankles and don't leave me. And, I'll give you my firstborn. That's the kind of feeling that comes up for me. But what I've done is, there's various alternatives that I can offer them. I know several teachers who are awesome teachers who charge less than me. And so I give them referrals so they can go check those people out. I also, I teach classes at the Passim School of Music, and, for a 5-week class at Passim, it costs $165, which is so inexpensive and very doable for just about anybody. So I do let them know about that. So there are alternatives I can offer them if my pricing doesn't work for them. But I will tell you that these days I charge for my 3-month package is a 10-lesson package is $1,500, and I'm always sold out. So in one of the musiciest towns in the world, Boston, Massachusetts, I'm pretty much always sold out. So, and raising my prices again was terrifying, but thank God. I mean, this is why I can really offer this incredible value to my students. So let's move on to some, I want to answer some questions.
Yeah, you want to do some Q&A, Janet?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, awesome. We've had so many questions just rolling in naturally that you've just taken care of. But, before we jump into the questions, I just wanted to address something that someone's in the chat about the Midwest in KC. Because Janet, where do you live again? You're on the East Coast, right?
I'm in the Boston area.
You're in the Boston area. And I know I don't have to say how drastic of a cost of living and like price difference there is between, our geographies. But Janet, something that you actually told me during one of our earlier meetings is that when people are afraid of investing in your classes, that's not a reflection of your work. That's not a reflection of a fear about giving you money. That's a fear related to their investment in themselves. If they're afraid of paying that much, paying however much you need, however much value you actually think, your lessons are worth, then they're not doubting your value. They're doubting how much they're actually worth in that equation. And I think that was a really eye-opening thing that you told me a couple of weeks ago when we were putting this together. And so I just wanted to state that again. But first question, Janet, and I think we've got a Q&A from Linda that sort of asks the same thing, is how do you spread the word about your lessons? So now that I've created the semester package, what do you do now?
Well, that's an awesome question. So one of the things that the first thing is that you want to get clear about who you're communicating with and then start communicating with them. And so one of the things that I did, because I was really based on our conversations, Fawn, I realized like, oh, I need to provide some sort of a follow-up after we're all done. So Fawn's going to put a link in the chat, and I'm offering, you can sign up for a free training as a follow-up to this webinar. And it's going to teach you how to start communicating with people to start attracting students. Like, what are the next steps? And the first thing is all about either, using your own mailing list that you have, but even if you have one already, there's a way to build a mailing list from scratch and then begin to communicate with, people. So if you're interested in a follow-up, so like, well, what's the next step? Sign up, and it's for free. And that's Fawn just put that in the chat for me. Thank you so much. And I have another question here. There's two great questions. So the question about group lessons or just semester package for single students. I do my semester packages for single students because I teach classes at the Passim School of Music. And that's actually a huge funnel for me. Most of my private students come from those classes. So that's actually another way to attract students, is if there's a music school in your area where you can teach some classes or lessons, that's a wonderful way for people to get to know you and to experience lessons with you. But I don't offer groups myself. Sometimes I offer a semi-private situation. That can be difficult though to have, with people who aren't necessarily at the same level. And then somebody put in something here about, is pricing versus current economic conditions worth speaking about? It's absolutely worth speaking about. So let me tell you, when in 2020, so I had been charging $1,000 for my 3-month package. And then in 2020, I had been doing that for 5 years. And in January 1st of 2020, I raised it to $1,500. And then COVID hit and I was terrified and the economy went to hell. and everybody was home, locked in their houses. And I was terrified, and I thought maybe I shouldn't do it. Maybe I should change it. And actually my practice exploded. I ended up with waiting lists. Um, and and I have to tell you, in rough economic times, there's been several times. I've been teaching since the 80s, so I've lived through several cycles of rough economies, and I have to tell you, my lesson slots are always full. And that was true when I charged a lot less, and it's true now. People have been really worried about the economy, with the COVID crisis and beyond. And still I have waiting lists. So it is worth thinking about. And when we have hard economic times, it is scary. But you know what? When people that I have had all sorts of people tell me that they can't afford my lessons, and then I find out that they've just spent 2 months traveling around India. So it really is a matter of, what's valuable to you. People pay for results, and they pay for something that they feel that is valuable to them. So Fawn just put a message in the chat. We're at an hour, and so if people have more questions, I'm happy to stay on for another 10 minutes if people want to ask more questions. Oh, thank you, Patty. You're awesome. I can't wait to see you in Kansas City. But if people would like to ask more questions, I'm happy to stay for an extra few minutes. Also, please sign up for my free training, because then it'll, it's for free, and it'll help you take the package you've created today and start to get it out to the world, so you can offer your fabulous lessons to more people. And please, let me know how it goes. Like, I want to hear from you. So that's a really great thing. Travel and place music. Oh, thanks, Annie.
Janet, I want to get to Flora's question about Zoom lessons, but we have a question from Jean, or maybe Jean, in the Q&A. Do current students remain as they were, or do you push them to shift to the package model?
Oh, I love that question. So when I started offering packages, I started offering that as like, this is how I do it now. Versus like, some people are not in packages, some people are. Otherwise, I think that would have made my head explode. So yeah, so a lot of it is, whenever you make any change, it's important that you sort of have a lead up of communication, like, starting next month, or starting, in, the first of the year, or whatever. I'm going to be offering my lessons in this way. And for students who are already studying with you, it's really nice in some way to offer them some sort of a loyalty bonus. Either a slightly lower price than what you're charging everybody else, or, you get an extra lesson because you've been studying with me for, you're one of my longtime students. So that's how I do it. And I hope that was helpful.
Flora, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that's helpful, Jean. All right, go ahead, Fawn.
Flora asks, sort of says that we didn't really cover Zoom lessons. We talked about that just before the webinar started, but do you want to talk a little bit about what Zoom costs, or the equipment that you need for that, and gear and whatnot?
Absolutely. So for Zoom lessons, having a professional Zoom account so you can be on for more than 40 minutes, it's really not cost prohibitive at all. It's like $15 a month and $150 for a year. So that's a pretty easy price to pay. You can do it month to month if that's easier for you. So for some short money, it gives you a lot of flexibility. The other thing about Zoom is that one of the things that I like doing is that it's nice to be able to record people. These days, there's one of the apps there's a whiteboard. So sometimes I can, like I'm a live classroom, I can put stuff on the whiteboard, and then that gets saved as a PDF and you can send that to students. I love being able to record the lessons. Sometimes I'll log in. If you have a phone, an iPad or some sort of a tablet, a desktop of some kind, or your smartphone. There's lots of different electronic ways that you can teach Zoom lessons. I find it, these days I have a desktop with a large screen, but before that I had 2 screens. So on one screen I would have the Zoom, the people or person, and on the other screen I have I can see the sheet music, and that also saves a lot of paper. Is this answering the question about Zoom, or is there anything else about Zoom that you'd like to know? Oh, yes. Oh, thank you, Ashley. So one of the things about Zoom also in terms of the technology is that in the audio settings, it's important that everybody's using what's called original sound. And it means, because what happens is if you don't have your original sound on, when you start playing, like with the guitar, when you start playing the instrument, it's suppressed as background noise, and so you can't hear it. So make sure that and I do a little tutorial with people about, do you have your original sound on? Usually the answer is no if they're new at working with me. And then I do the whole tutorial. Okay, now click the mouse here, pick this in the menu, and so is that helpful? Or does anybody have any other questions in general or about Zoom or anything like that? And thank you. I want to just say before, I know some people are starting to sign off, and that's thank you all so much for coming. I hope you've had as much fun as I've had. This has been just a blast, and I hope if you're going to Folk Alliance in February, I'm going to have a table in the exhibit hall, and I'm running a showcase room, and please come see me. Oh, Jan. Hi, Jan. All right. Have you tried other platforms besides Zoom? I am thinking about switching to Teams. You know what? I haven't used Teams. I've, before the pandemic, I used to do virtual lessons, and I used to use Skype, and I've used, because in those days, Skype was actually better than Zoom, and the pandemic changed that. So what I would say is, before you try any new technology, is, do a trial, and test it out for yourself and see if it works for you. It's like with any new technology, like you want to try things out and see which one fits your style the best. Okay. So, all right. Well, just want to, Fawn, if you can put that link back in the chat one more time for people. So if anybody is interested on the next steps about what to do with your fabulous package that you created today, Fawn just put the link back into the chat so you can find that easily. And I just want to thank all of you for coming, and let's give a woohoo to Fawn for all the fabulous technical support and also the preparation, because I couldn't have done it without him. And thank you to Alex for offering me the opportunity to do this today. And I hope everybody has an awesome, awesome day.
Thank you, Janet, and thanks for setting this all up and giving us such a wonderful lesson. I feel like everyone was just so happy to be a part of this. We had so much engagement, so many great questions. And so thank you to Janet. Thank you to Janet's Planet for sponsoring this webinar. And thank you to all of you for showing up and being part of our community and supporting this webinar. On a final note, we offer all of our year-round online offerings at no cost to our members and to non-members, thanks to the generosity of our donors. So if you'd like to support our work, donations can be made at folk.org/donate. And I'll post a link in the chat for that as well. And the recording of this webinar will be sent out later today, with including all the relevant links that we shared in the chat today. Those will all be shared later today once we get that uploaded. So thanks everybody for joining, and have a great day.